What's up, legends? Welcome back to Business Legends. I'm Alex. Real quick, before we jump in, I've got an insane story for you today. Quick question, did you know Nintendo used to make playing cards? I'm not kidding. This is the same company that now dominates the video game industry, with Mario, Zelda, and Pokemon. The story of how they completely reinvented themselves is absolutely wild, and there's a lesson here for all of us. So picture this. It's 1889 in Kyoto, Japan. A craftsman named Fusajiro Yamauchi opens a small shop to make something called hanafuda, these beautiful hand-painted flower cards. The name Nintendo, nobody really knows what it means, but some say it's leave luck to heaven. And honestly, that's exactly what this company would end up doing over and over again. Here's the thing, these weren't just any playing cards. Hanafuda had this crazy backstory. See, Japan had banned most forms of gambling back in 1882. But hanafuda, they got a pass. And you know who loved these cards? The Yakuza. Yeah, the Japanese mafia was running gambling parlors all over Kyoto, and Nintendo cards were their go-to choice. Now most card makers were like, nah, we're not touching that. They didn't want to be associated with organized crime. But Fusajiro, he saw an opportunity. While his competitors ran away, he doubled down. Within just a few years, Nintendo became the primary producer of hanafuda in Japan. The business stayed in the family for 3 generations. But here's where it gets interesting. In 1949, Fusahiro's grandson Sekiryo has a stroke. Problem is, there's no clear successor. So they call in his 22-year-old grandson, Hiroshi Yamauchi, who's studying law at Waseda University. Now, young Hiroshi had one condition before taking over. He had to be the only family member working at Nintendo. His grandfather agreed, which meant firing Hiroshi's older cousin. Cold? Maybe. But this guy was about to transform everything. The employees? They took one look at this college dropout and thought, this kid's gonna fold. Wrong. When factory workers went on strike, thinking he'd cave easily, Hiroshi did the opposite. He fired every single employee who questioned his authority. Message received. But Hiroshi wasn't just tough, he was smart. He looked at the playing card business and saw its limits. In 1959, he made a move that changed everything. A licensing deal with Walt Disney. Nintendo started printing playing cards with Mickey Mouse and Disney characters. Listen to this, they sold 600,000 decks in 1 year. That's when Nintendo went public and Hiroshi became chairman. But then he takes this trip to Cincinnati to visit the United States Playing Card Company, the world's biggest card manufacturer. You know what he finds? A tiny office and a small factory. That's when it hits him, playing cards is a dead-end business. So what does Hiroshi do? He goes absolutely wild with diversification. I'm talking instant rice. A taxi company called Daya. Even love hotels. Yeah, Nintendo ran love hotels. And guess what? Every single one failed. The company was heading straight for bankruptcy. But here's where Nintendo's story takes its first massive turn. It's the 1960s, and Hiroshi notices something. Japan's economy is booming, families have more disposable income, and kids want toys. So Nintendo pivots into the toy business. They create these things called the Ultra Hand, the Ultra Machine, the Love Tester. Weird stuff, but it's selling. Then in 1977, Hiroshi makes the decision that would define Nintendo forever. He sees these new video game things and decides to jump in. But here's the kicker. The video game industry had just crashed in America. Atari was in ruins. Retailers wouldn't touch video games. Everyone thought the whole industry was dead, but Hiroshi, he hired this young artist named Shigeru Miyamoto and basically said, make us a hit game for America. Miyamoto had never designed a game before. His big idea? A game about a carpenter trying to save his girlfriend from a giant ape. They called the carpenter Jumpman. The game was Donkey Kong. And when it hit American arcades in 1981, boom, instant phenomenon. Kids were lining up with quarters. Nintendo of America went from near bankruptcy to printing money. Oh, and Jumpman? They renamed him after their warehouse landlord. His name was Mario Segale. Yeah, that Mario. But Nintendo wasn't done. In 1983, they released the Famicom in Japan, what we'd call the Nintendo Entertainment System. Remember, video games were basically dead in America at this point. Retailers wanted nothing to do with them. So Nintendo did something genius. They didn't call it a video game system. They called it an entertainment system. They packaged it with a toy robot called ROB, to make it look like a toy, not a video game. 1985, the NES launches in America with a game called Super Mario Bros. And this is where Nintendo doesn't just succeed, they single-handedly resurrect an entire industry. The NES goes on to sell 62 million units worldwide. Super Mario Bros. Over 40 million copies. Nintendo didn't just enter the video game industry, they saved it. Throughout the late 80s and 90s, Nintendo just keeps innovating. The Game Boy in 1989, 118 million units sold. The Super Nintendo. The Nintendo 64. And here's what's crazy. While competitors like Sega and Sony were competing on graphics and processing power, Nintendo competed on something else, fun. Hiroshi had this philosophy. He'd say, video games are not necessities of life. They cannot sell unless they are really amusing. While everyone else was trying to make games more realistic, Nintendo was asking, is this fun? Now, not everything was smooth sailing. The late 90s and early 2000s? Rough times. The Nintendo 64 and GameCube were getting destroyed by Sony's PlayStation. People were saying Nintendo was finished, that they should go third-party like Sega. The press was brutal. Investors wanted blood. But in 2002, Hiroshi does something nobody expected. After 53 years running Nintendo, he steps down. He hands the company to Satoru Iwata, who wasn't even part of the Yamauchi family. First time in Nintendo's history. Iwata looks at the gaming landscape and sees something everyone else missed. Gaming had become too complicated. Controllers had like 15 buttons. Games took 100 hours to complete. Regular people, moms, dads, grandparents, they couldn't play anymore. So Nintendo built something nobody asked for, the Nintendo DS. 2 screens? Touch controls? Everyone said it was gimmicky. The PSP was gonna crush it. You know what happened? The DS sold 154 million units. It's still Nintendo's best-selling system ever. But they weren't done. 2006, they announced the Wii. The controller? It looks like a TV remote. The graphics? Worse than the Xbox 360 and PS3. The games? Wii Sports, where you swing the controller like a tennis racket. Gamers laughed. This is a toy, they said. The Wii sold 101 million units. It outsold both the 360 and PS3. You had grandmothers playing Wii bowling. Families gathering around Wii Sports. Nintendo didn't compete with Sony and Microsoft. They created their own category. Then came the dark times. The Wii U in 2012? Total disaster. Sold 13 million units. Nintendo's stock crashed. People were saying they should abandon hardware, just make games for phones. The press wrote them off again. Nintendo is doomed, they said. But here's the thing about Nintendo. They've been doomed like 5 times. And every single time, they come back with something nobody expects. March 2017. Nintendo releases the Switch. It's a hybrid. Play at home on your TV, take it with you as a handheld. The technology wasn't cutting edge. The graphics weren't mind-blowing. But it was fun. And it solved a real problem. Gamers wanted to play console games on the go. The Switch? It sold over 152 million units and counting. It saved Nintendo again. Games like Breath of the Wild and Animal Crossing became cultural phenomena. During COVID, Animal Crossing: New Horizons sold 45 million copies. People were paying real money for virtual turnips. Wild times. And right now, June 2025, Nintendo just launched the Switch 2. First week, 3.5 million units sold. Fastest selling Nintendo console ever. The company that started making flower cards for the Yakuza is now worth $80 billion. Their characters, Mario, Zelda, Pokemon, they're more recognizable than most movie stars. They've got theme parks, movies, merchandise everywhere. But here's what kills me. Every few years, someone predicts Nintendo's death. They can't compete with PlayStation. Mobile gaming will destroy them. They need to go third party. And every time Nintendo does something completely unexpected and proves everyone wrong. You know why? Because they never forgot Hiroshi's philosophy: artists create excellent games, not technicians. While everyone else is obsessed with graphics and processing power, Nintendo asks one question: is this fun? They turned down easy money so many times. They could have put Mario on PlayStation. They could have made pay-to-win mobile games. They could have chased trends. Instead, they stayed true to their vision. They made games for everyone: kids, parents, grandparents. They made gaming social again. They made it magical. And that transformation? From hanafuda cards to video game empire? It took guts. When Hiroshi saw the limits of playing cards, he didn't just make better cards. He reimagined what Nintendo could be. When video games crashed, they didn't run. They rebuilt the entire industry. When gaming became too complex, they simplified it. When everyone said hardware was dead, they proved hardware could still innovate. Alright, 3 quick takeaways from Nintendo's story. Sometimes your biggest strength is ignoring what everyone else is doing. Nintendo never won by copying Sony or Microsoft. Transformation isn't a one-time thing. Nintendo reinvented itself over and over: cards to toys to games to experiences. Fun beats everything. Graphics, processing power, market research. None of it matters if your product isn't genuinely enjoyable. Look, every single company we cover started with someone who decided to bet on themselves. Maybe that's the real lesson here. If this story fired you up, hit subscribe and ring that bell. Drop a comment below. Which company should I cover next? I read every single one. Until next time, keep building your legend. Peace.